Hi, this is Jeremy Brown with MoveEd, and thank you for joining us today for our second series in the video 3D breath. 3 diaphragms, 3 dimensions. And second video, we're going to be exploring the second diaphragm up the chain today, our respiratory diaphragm, the one we really mostly think of as a diaphragm. And when you've heard people talk about diaphragmatic breathing in the past, this is what they're referring to. It's a big dome of muscle that sits underneath our bottom ribs and runs all the way from the front, right at the bottom of the breastbone, all the way around those ribs into the back where it meets into the spine. So we're going to be looking at trying to get a more healthy, full breath through that space and through the belly and the abdominals below that. Today again we have Susan here as our model helping us out, so just see this on a real body instead of just hearing me talk. And we're going to begin today just talking again about the quality of breath that we're going to be using to make changes. So the first thing we want to do within this is slow our breathing down. So maybe just be aware of how long you're taking a breath in and how long you're taking a breath out. Typically, our breathing tends to be a little rushed and a little shallow. So the first thing we're going to do is slow that down so that maybe we take, instead of 1 second to breathe in and out, we take maybe 2, 3, ideally even maybe 4 or 5 seconds to take a nice, slow, easy breath in and a nice, slow, easy breath out. Now, that does not mean that we're necessarily trying to take in a lot more air. We're not taking in a big breath, just a much slower, more gentle breath. And that slower, more gentle breath gives us more time to relax, and it gives us more time to start to make changes in the body, more time of awareness that where maybe we're holding tension or releasing tension. So then, with that, we're going to start to be aware of the shape of our breath. And we're going to begin with our hands resting kind of on our lower belly, right below the ribs. So kind of around your navel, above your navel, anywhere through there is fine. And as we take a breath in, what's happening there? Anything? Does the belly even move as you breathe? And ideally, it does. So as we take a breath in, we need to release tension in our abdominals somewhat, so that we can allow our diaphragm to sink and expand. So just think about that. As we breathe in, can I feel like the skin and muscle of my belly expands into my fingertips? And as I exhale, we want to keep from squeezing tension into that space. Maybe you feel like your belly sinks away from your fingertips, but it doesn't grip back in. Much like in the previous video we worked on with the lower belly, just kind of thinking about the same concept a little higher up through the abdominals, through the organs. And so for a couple of breaths, just consider that I could inhale and start to allow maybe not just the front of the belly, but even kind of the sides to start to release. And then on the exhale, we're going to try to maintain some of that ease. Now, opposite that part of the body, we have the lower back, all right? And often we carry a lot of excessive tension in the lower back. And it's fine if there's a gap behind your lower back. In fact, that's a nice, healthy, normal curvature to the spine. But we don't want to be holding tension there. So as we breathe in, think about what's happening at the lower belly under the hands, and try to match that in the opposite direction through the lower back. There could be a sense that as you breathe in, your lower back sinks a little more back into gravity, and any tendency to hold tension in those muscles starts to sink a little more into gravity. And then as we exhale, we just try to keep that ease, try to keep that passive softness of the lower spine into gravity. Or even starting to think about that breath happening in 2 directions, that the lower belly gently rises toward the ceiling into your hands away from the ground, and your lower back sinks a little heavier into gravity, into the ground. Again, we're not looking to force the lower back into contact with the ground. We're just trying to let go of some of that muscular tension, that soft tissue tension that maybe we hold in the lumbar spine. Then we're going to just take our hands into the gap So I'm going to move thumbs and index finger away from each other so you have a nice open palm position. And we're going to take our hands around that gap in the waist, in between the ribs and the pelvis. And the same thing we were thinking of, say, down through the pelvis when we did that video, we're going to think of here, that as we take a breath in, ideally we can also allow the sides of our abdominals to relax outward into our hands, or some of those muscles on our back under our thumbs to relax out into our hands. And then as we exhale, we're just going to try to keep some of that ease. So we're going to try not to squeeze that back together. Maybe being a little aware as this happens of differences side to side. Maybe one side is a little easier to relax than the other side. It's a little easier to feel expand than the other side. And use that as a guide. Okay? If I can feel that one side expands and relaxes, how does that help me understand how the other side could also relax and expand as I breathe in? So as you continue with this, maybe starting to think of that a little more as a full three-dimensional circle. That breath expands front to back and side to side. So as we breathe in, our entire waist above our pelvis and below our ribs has a nice easy space to expand into. And as we exhale, we try not to squeeze back into that space. Great. And so while we do a couple of those breaths, we'll circle back to a point about our breathing. So ideally, as we breathe, this expansion under our hands makes us bigger, right? We get to be a bigger space, and air is pulled into the body to fill that space. So as I breathe and relax and expand, that's what brings air in. That's what fills my lungs. So try to keep your nose relaxed and your face and your jaw and your head relaxed. Try not to suck air in through your nose. Instead, let all of that relax. Allow your throat to relax and feel like instead of pulling air in and pushing it down into your belly, you're allowing the belly and the waist to expand, and that lets air flow really smoothly and easily through your nose, down your throat, and into your lungs. And as we exhale, the same thing. There's no need to squeeze air out of the body. We just relax. As we relax, you're naturally going to recoil a little bit and air will come back out. So, carrying that idea up a little bit higher, we're just going to move the hands up to the sides of the ribs. So the thumbs are hooked under the back of the ribs and the fingertips are resting around the sides. Now that might not be a comfortable position for your shoulders. If it's not, you could just let your hands rest on the front of the ribs. If you had a strap or a belt handy, you could wrap that strap or the belt all the way around and just hold it wrapped around you. I was looking for one handy, I don't have one. You could have that handy so you could feel that you could expand outward into a strap. But what we're going to focus on here is first just noticing how the ribs move under the hands. Most often, it's very easy to feel that the ribs move forward as we take a breath in. So you might feel that as you breathe in, the ribs rise up and stick out away from the ground. And as we exhale, they sink back. But how much do the ribs expand out to the side in the space, say, in between the index finger and the thumb, kind of that gap in the hand? How much does that happen? So as you inhale, ideally, the ribs push outward. And as we exhale, there's a sense of them sinking back together. Often this is a space where it does start to be helpful to feel that, well, maybe one side does that a little more than the other. And how does that feel for one side of the ribs to expand outward into the hand? And can you encourage the other side to also push and expand outward into the hand? Being aware of maybe how that starts to release tension through maybe the waist or through the back, and being aware of not gripping back into that tension on an exhale. And for a couple of breaths, just focus on that the inhale could expand side to side through the ribs, pushing out into the hand. And then as the exhale, it doesn't squeeze together. Maybe even starting to notice that as you breathe to the side more, the ribs don't pop forward in the front as much. So we're starting to kind of change the way that part of the body moves when we breathe. Lastly, through this segment of the body, we're going to focus on the back, where the thumbs are meeting into the ribs. Or again, if it's not comfortable to have your thumbs all the way back there, if it's uncomfortable on your shoulders, just think about that part of your body, your lower ribs, and how they're sitting in contact with the mat, or how far they are away from the mat, or how much tension is back there. And as we take a breath in, does it feel like the ribs expand into the thumbs or expand back into that space? Probably not. Often this is not a space that we get a lot of movement, but it is a really valuable space to find movement. That starts to reduce tension in our back. So as we breathe in, think about it being a movement into gravity. You're allowing the back of the ribs to sink and expand back into the mat, sink and expand back into the thumbs. You're releasing tension through that space that as we exhale, we're trying to keep easy and keep heavy into the mat. And then lastly, for a few breaths, we're just going to focus on both that circle of the waist and the circle of the lower ribs where we have our respiratory diaphragm. Just having a bigger picture of that entire space, that entire cylinder expanding, especially expanding outward and backward as we breathe in. Feeling how maybe that starts to release tension, muscle tension, soft tissue tension through the ribs and waist and lower back. And as we breathe out, we're going to try to keep that part of the body pretty easy, pretty neutral. So while you take a couple of moments to do a couple more of those slow, easy, full 3D breaths through your diaphragm, I'm going to mention that it would be incredible if you would take the time after you get up to click the like and subscribe button. Maybe share this content with anyone who you think it would be of value to or interest to, so we can keep getting the word out, sharing some healthy breath with all of our friends and family. So thanks for joining us. Check out our next video in the series where we look at breathing through the ribs, lungs, and thoracic diaphragm at the top of the container. Thanks for checking us out today.